You guys, welcome back. This is Ebb Friday, and today I'm going to show you guys how to mimic the look of the movie Saw. Here I have a screenshot of Saw, and I really love the green tones. It really adds a sicky, horror, dark type feel to it, which I really love. So let's analyze the RGB scopes to see how they made this image. If we look at the shadows, it's hitting 0. If we look at the green channel, it's hitting 1023. The red and blue channels are, let's say, 896. Let's go to our vector scope, and the vector scope, most of the information is pointing towards the green channel. Let's go back to our parades. Analyzing the scopes is definitely the #1 technique into trying to mimic any look that you like. So let's go to our clip. Here we have a guy rolling a barrel into a room. He's silhouetted, and we have some nice lighting. First things first, this was shot on the Red Helium 8K, and we're not going to work with the IPP2. We're going to convert this footage to Rec 709. In order to do that, we're going to click on our gear wheel. We'll go to color management, we'll go to color science, and we'll click Davinci Resolve YRGB color managed. When we choose this option, Davinci Resolve will take your log raw footage and convert it into Rec 709. This is the Rec 709 conversion from our red footage. So what I'll do is I'll add 2 nodes, and on my last node, I'm going to use one of my horror LUTs that's available on my website, and it's actually on sale right now, so you guys definitely need to pick that up. We'll click on our Saw shot, we'll right click, we'll grab a still, we'll go to our gallery, we'll click on our footage, then we'll click on our still, and we'll click our image wipe button to bring them up on the screen. And let's analyze our footage to compare it with Saw's footage. So if we just scale this back, and if we take a look at our footage, we haven't quite hit 0. The greens haven't quite hit 1023. The reds and blues, we want to keep under 896. Let's take a look at our vector scope. And as you can see, the information on our image is pointed towards blue and cyan. And if you look at our Saw screenshot, the information is pointed towards green. So we got a bit of work to do to get these 2 images looking pretty close. So I'll click on my last node. I'll go to my LUT section, and I'm just going to preview one of these LUTs and see if I can get it pretty close to what we're going for. And right now we're just looking for the feel. We're looking at the shadows, we're looking at the highlights. Okay, I think my Ouija LUT will do the trick. When trying to mimic the look of any film, what we want to do is we want to look at exposure, saturation, shadows, and anything else that we can clue ourselves into getting as close as possible. So on our first node, we're going to deal with the exposure. So I'll just name this exposure. And let's try to match the exposure of our reference image. So we'll go back to our parade. And to the right, you'll see the information that's on our shot. And to the left is the information on the Saw image. Let's go to our color bars. And let's just bring down the offset. So that's looking pretty cool. We're not going to worry about the colors right now. We'll just focus on the exposure. So we're looking at the highlights and we're looking at the shadows on both images. So that looks pretty nice. Now we want to deal with the greens, because if we look at the saw's greens, it's pretty extended to the top. So maybe we can grab our highlights in the green section and we'll bring that up. Let's go to the midtones and bring up the greens. That's looking good. Let's see what the shadows give us. That looks pretty good. Let's go to our vector scope, because the vector scope will really tell you a lot more information on color and saturation than the parade scopes would. So if I just wipe this image, we can now see that the detail or the information in the channel has flipped. So if I turn my first node off, you'll see that it's back over to blue and cyan. And if I turn it on, you'll see that it's getting over to the green side. So let's bring our reference image back. And that's looking pretty close. So we'll leave the exposure for now. We'll add a new node, Alt S. And let's deal with the saturation. If we add saturation, you'll see that the information is extended more towards the green. We don't want that. We want to match it up with the reference still. So if we take away saturation, you'll see that it goes back to the middle. So that saturation looks a bit better. Now that we have the saturation figured out, let's add a new node. So I'm just going to name this real quick. Saturation. And on the new node, we're going to call this contrast. So now let's try to match the contrast of our reference image to our image. We're just going to go to the contrast slider and we'll just bring it up. And also we're watching the vector scope to make sure that we don't go past our reference information. So that looks pretty cool. Let's go for our pivot. And that looks pretty cool. And we'll add one more node and we'll play with the white balance. So we'll call that white balance. If we grab the tint slider and we push it to the left, the image will get more green. And if we push it to the right, it gets more magenta. So let's just add a little bit more green to this image to send it home. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Let's see what the color temperature gives us. Ah, there we go. So if we push it more to orange, it gets us where we need to be. Let's bring the reference white back. And there's still something that's missing, and I think I know what it is. So we'll add one more node, and we'll call it grain. And we'll add some grain. Let's go to the effects panel, and we'll type grain. And what I like to do with grain is I like to turn the opacity all the way up and just cycle through the presets. And I think that looks pretty good, 8mm. So we'll just dial this back. Something around there. And we'll just play this. And that's looking pretty good. Let's turn off our LUT and see what the LUT is doing. So that's without the LUT, and that's with the LUT. So our LUT is adding a little bit more contrast. It's bringing it into a film space. and this is before the LUT, it's after. This is before our grade, and this is after. Let's pull up our reference wipe. Looks like we can still bring the shadows down a bit. So I'm going to go to my log controls, and I'm just going to bring the shadows down a bit. It's looking pretty good. And one of the key features to matching a shot that you like is it has to be pretty close and lit pretty close. It has to be shot pretty close to whatever reference you're trying to match. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If this tutorial helped you out in any way, please subscribe, like, share with a friend, and don't forget to practice, 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 because it makes perfect. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.